Hello and welcome to Border Report Live. I'm Rudy Mireles, and I'm coming to you from the ValleyCentral.com digital desk here in deep South Texas, Harlingen, Texas, to be exact. And joining me today on the program is South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. Hey, Sandra.
Great to be here, Rudy.
All right. And a little later in the program, we're going to be speaking with former commissioner for the U.S. International Boundary and Water Commission, Maria Elena Giner, to talk about the water treaty issues going on that are affecting our farmers and ranchers all across the border with the southern border with Mexico. But first, we're going to talk about some of the things happening, some of the headlines across the 1,900-mile or so stretch?
1,975-mile border.
That is a very, very long border. And today's top story actually was supposed to be President Donald Trump over the weekend ordering ICE to pause arrests at farms, restaurants, and hotels, expressing concerns about the impact those raids are having. But just shortly before coming on the air this afternoon, on this Tuesday afternoon, we're getting word that those ICE raids that were halted at, again, that was at hotels, restaurants, and farms, and meatpacking plants, according to the New York Times. Those are now going back into full force. Now, on Saturday, you may have heard the president saying that he, quote, on Truth Social, saying, quote, "We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming," end quote. And while the president had said that, sources had told the Associated Press that White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller said the goal for ICE is to make 3,000 arrests daily. That would be a 360% increase from the around 650 arrests that they're making per day over the last 5 months. Now, here in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, some farmers, one that you can see on your screen there, he actually told KVEO and ValleyCentral.com that his entire workforce has just stopped showing up to work. Let me just say that again. His entire workforce on his farm has stopped showing up to work, fearing that ICE will come for them. And those raids, right, that we're hearing about all across the country are what's spurring scenes like this on your screen right now. Now, thousands of people across the country took to the streets to protest against those ICE raids over the weekend. And this is video from one of those protests that happened right here in McAllen, Texas. In other news, Florida youth referred to ICE. The Miami Herald reported that Florida child welfare authorities alerted ICE to a 17-year-old youth in foster care. Doing such, if this is true, it would violate a 30-year ban on such practices. Now, the Young Center for Immigrant Children's Rights condemned the action, saying that the arrest, handcuffing, and shackling of a child was, quote, appalling and jeopardized the child's safety and well-being. In other news, the Trump travel ban has gone into effect. Has gone into effect, prohibiting entry into the United States for nationals from 12 countries, and those countries include Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, the Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, the Sudan, and Yemen as well. Trump says it is in the national interest to protect security concerns from foreign terrorists and other threats. Now, TPS revoked self-deportation is being urged. 500,000 migrants with temporary protected status are being urged to self-deport after the Trump administration revoked the program that had extended legal protections to migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And right now, that is a look at what is making news along the southern border. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we're talking all things water, or lack thereof, with former commissioner for the U.S. International Boundary and Water Commission, Maria Elena Giner, to get a better understanding of what exactly is behind the water shortage impacting our farmers, ranchers, and ultimately all of us trying to put food on the table. Stay with us. You're watching Border Report Live. Welcome back to the program. Today's topic is the water shortage, why it's happening, and is anyone responsible for it? And joining us today to talk all things water is former Commissioner for the U.S. International Boundary and Water Commission, Maria Elena Gined. Welcome to the program, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Sandra, for this kind invitation. I look forward to talking water.
Well, let's just jump in here. So, for 80 years, since 1944, the International Water Treaty between Mexico and the United States has established how the two countries will share water, right? They will supply water to one another. Let me just recap for viewers. So, the United States and Mexico are required to pay each other. The United States pays via the Colorado River 1 million acre feet per year from the United States to the Colorado River to Mexico. Mexico is required to pay 1.75 million acre feet via the Rio Grande to the United States over a 5-year cycle. Is that correct? We pay them 1.5 million acre feet. They pay us 1.75. We pay annually. They pay over 5 years.
That is correct.
Okay.
Correct, Sandra.
And an acre field, okay, it's like if you flooded a field, an acre field, 1 foot high of water is what an acre foot is. So that is how we measure water. Just to imagine, about 2 acre feet is about the equivalent of the water in a 50-meter Olympic-sized swimming pool. So if you can just kind of figure that out. Lack of water, Mexico has had trouble making their payments, and we're going to get into that, but it's had some consequences, severe consequences here on the South Texas border. Last year in January, a sugar mill here in Hidalgo County shut down, caused the loss of 500 jobs. County declared an emergency. Several cities along the southwest border have water restrictions in place to try to conserve some of the water. Latest data that I got today from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality shows that combined U.S. ownership at Amistad and Falcon reservoirs, those are our 2 reservoirs, are at 22%. That is up 18% from a year ago. Amistad is at 19% conservation, meaning that's how much water they have. And Falcon is at 10.71, so almost into single digits. Now, Dr. Gined has been commissioner from September 2021 until just April, first Latina woman to hold the post. El Paso graduate from Loretta Academy, my mother-in-law, that's her alma mater. PhD in public policy from UT Austin, and you are an engineer and the daughter of an immigrant. You also, I understand, lived for some time in Mexico.
Correct.
And recently you participated in a forum at the LBJ Presidential Library there in Austin called High and Dry, Confronting Texas's Water Crisis. So is this a crisis? And what can be done to get Mexico to pay the water it owes? Because as I understand it, they have only paid us about 618,000 acre feet so far this 5-year cycle that ends in October. They owe us like 1 million acre feet, and they're just not going to be able to pay that in the next few remaining months, right? Is this a crisis, ma'am?
Right. So the whole region is, from a hydrologic perspective, or from the flow, all of the rivers that flow into the region is in crisis. We've seen about a 30% reduction when we were starting to look at our measurement stations, called gauging stations of the region. We were seeing that the region has lost about 600,000 acre feet of water that normally would be flowing into the region every year. And so the lack of Mexico paying in a timely manner actually dates back to 1992-97. It's been a reoccurring issue every 5-year cycle. And the crisis part of it is that it doesn't allow our farmers to plan for it, but it's not just the from Mexico that's also been a problem. We're also experiencing less precipitation, less flows coming from U.S. tributaries that combined are highly impacting the region. They've lost about 30% of the water that flows in there. So it is a crisis right now.
Also, some of the infrastructure, the way we capture water and hold water here is outdated, and we are losing through evaporation, through the channel system that we have here with the canals, the way we're transferring water is not very efficient. So I think it's not only Mexico, but the United States that has some work to do to try to get the water issues. You mentioned there are some issues causing this overpopulation, drought, climate, right?
Right.
But also, is Mexico paying like they should? I mean, they should typically give 350,000 acre feet annually per year on average. I mean, they're not in debt until the 5 years is up. But if they made those payments, then they would make the 1.75 million. But they don't seem to do that since the 90s, you indicated.
Right, right. And so what one of the things that I'm really proud of my tenure that I did at IBWC was share two pieces of very critical information. One was for the public to really understand that the way Mexico is managing the basins is not working for them or for us. One, they manage their basin in a way that they've only really delivered water through whatever they spill or cannot capture. There's not necessarily intentional deliveries that are being made. So definitely Texas is not being managed as a user, but also it just seems that since the 1944 water treaty, that's how they've managed the basin. And so really getting them to change how they're managing their basin so that they do make these annual deliveries is really important. Out of the last six 5 year cycles, Mexico has either not met their 5 year cycle or been very, very close to not meeting it, and is rushing at the end trying to make up that 5 year cycle. 5 of the 6. So this is something that definitely needs to change in Mexico's management of water. And Sandra, the other thing that you mentioned about efficiencies, this is also an opportunity for both sides to implement projects on efficiencies. As you know, if Mexico were to deliver 350,000 acre feet of water per year, the region from Amistad all the way down to South Texas needs between 1.5 million acre feet to 2 million acre feet a year. So 350,000 is a very important source, 30% of their source, but definitely there's work to be done that will benefit the U.S. side should efficiencies be implemented in the South Texas region.
You mentioned something about Mexico not making its deliveries. Let's counter that. Is the United States putting aside the water and making its deliveries to Mexico? And what's the difference? What do we do that they don't do?
And so really that's kind of the egregious part of it, right? In the sense that the United States takes Mexico's water off the top and delivers. That is always what's considered first.
From a
If
reservoir.
Mexico,
Okay.
yes, at the Colorado River. So the 1.5 million acre feet, the Bureau of Reclamation manages in a way that is what's paid first before what's distributed amongst the other users. What's really important to highlight there is that when there's shortage, the 1944 Water Treaty does allow for when there's shortage in one country, there's shortage in the other. So if there's a reduction in inflows coming in on the Colorado River, then Mexico also experiences a reduction. And so that's been part of the collaboration that's been going on the Colorado River. But definitely on the U.S. side, on the Rio Grande side, Mexico has chosen to of all of their consumption to consume 4 million acre feet of water in the last 4+ years, and only delivering at that point only 400,000. So they definitely had water to share. And they
Wow.
definitely need to change how they manage their basin.
Now, there were some reports also that Mexico has something like 8,000 wells that they have dug in Chihuahua. There's also been pushback from farmers there who have not wanted to release the water, send the water to the United States. And Mexico has something like 11 reservoirs where we have 2 here. So were they supposed to have so many reservoirs to capture this water? Are they using it for their own? Was that part of the treaty?
So when the 1944 Water Treaty was negotiated, they actually did a hydrologic study. They had gauging stations data dating back to 1900. And they looked at the data between 1900 and 1943 and projected it forward. they had at that point about 80% of their reservoirs already built. And then they also projected additional reservoirs and additional consumption for their users. And at that time, they were able to demonstrate that just by whatever spilled, they would be able to make, generally speaking, their 5-year cycle. And if they didn't, they would be able to make it up in the next 5-year cycle because of the expected rains and naturalized flows or runoff that would come from that. That has definitely changed since the 1992-97 5-year cycle, where they're not capturing as much, that they're also consuming more because they've grown their agricultural region. So and they've actually are really over allocated. So again, managing their basins so that they manage it in a way that they're making the deliveries that they need to make, not just from Chihuahua to the river, but also their own states after Chihuahua, like Tamaulipas, right? Where in theory, whatever flows into the river belongs, 1/3 of it belongs to the United States, but 2/3 of it definitely belongs to Mexico. So not only are there impacts on the US side of the river down in South Texas, but also on the Tamaulipas side.
Now, very quickly, we're going to go to commercial break in about 1 minute. But right before you step down, you were able to successfully negotiate a change to this treaty, which allowed Mexico to prepay some water and also to pay for a couple basins that had previously not been stipulated, the San Juan River and the Alamo Rivers. How important is that, and what is that showing to date? Is that why we see the increase in water now?
Right. That's why there's been an increase in the two reservoirs, because they are taking San Juan River water. The other thing is that based on the hydrology that we looked at, the San Juan River consistently fills about every 5 years, or reservoirs, and that's not the trends we're seeing upstream of that. So as weather is getting hotter, as patterns and hurricanes are changing, that basin, the San Juan River basin, starts to become really important water source, and making sure we kept our door open for that water source was really important as part of this agreement.
All right. Well, we're speaking with former U.S. IBWC Commissioner Maria Elena Gined on the water shortage impacting the southern border, as well as what we're learning today in parts of northern Mexico. We'll be right back. Stick around for more.
Thank you.
And welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host for this Tuesday edition of Border Report Live. And joining us right now is South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. And today's guest, talking the water shortage along the southern border, is former U.S. International Boundary and Water Commissioner Maria Elena Gined. Thanks for coming on again.
Dr. Gined, before the break, you were talking about the change that you had gotten successfully made to the 1944 treaty. I wonder, from a diplomatic standpoint, I mean, how difficult is it to get diplomats south of the border to make Mexico move the needle? I mean, what did that take from you? I read where you called this the hardest job you ever had. What was that like?
Well, it was difficult, Sandra, and as you may recall, the last time any major change to how water was delivered on the Rio Grande was in 1968. So definitely giving Mexico the tools to deliver water from different sources, from giving us a larger share of their water, given the fact that they basically only deliver what they cannot capture, and as well as giving them tools to look at opportunities for conservation on both sides of the border, I think is really important. But it was very difficult because another country has to agree to what you're trying to propose, and it took many meetings. And then the other thing is that the stakeholders, I must have held at least a dozen meetings with stakeholders throughout this negotiation process on the U.S. side, really getting that buy-in from them. And we had to ensure that everybody had a win. It was about growing the pie. And one country's loss cannot be another country's gain because geography doesn't change and we still have to be neighbors. And definitely having good relationships, transparency, and trust was really critical and important.
And something as important as water, life sustaining, and so difficult. You mentioned a piece of the pie, but it's not a pie that you can cut. You're trying to take from the top, you're saying. So this is really complicated hydrology stuff. And in with these diplomatic relationships, I remember I would go to meeting after meeting, and you'd say, "Well, they're just on the verge of agreeing." There, and then the next month, "Well, they say they're just on the verge of agreeing," but
right.
you did get it. Congratulations!
Right.
I did want to switch gears before we end our 30 minutes is going so fast. But I wanted to talk about another issue. Let's move to the other side of the southwest border, Southern California, the San Diego Tijuana River Valley, which has this massive sewage problem coming from Mexico. And actually, the IBWC is sinking millions of dollars in to help repair this sewage facility, correct? What is the update on that? And how dangerous is that for the residents there on both sides of the border?
Oh, it is definitely another crisis. This IBWC was experiencing crisis while I was there along the entire border. And this crisis, Sandra, is from decades of lack of investment, not only on the Mexican side in their wastewater infrastructure with growth going on the Mexican side, but also on the US side. Our wastewater treatment plant had not been in compliance for 2 years. And only $4 million had been invested in that. And so obviously before we could expand it, we need to rehabilitate it. And so that was part of the work that I did. I negotiated with Mexico an investment on their behalf of $144 million in their wastewater treatment facilities, which for them, equivalent US dollars, is about $500 million. Because of the difference in the cost of construction in Mexico. And on the U.S. side, I was able to secure an additional $350 million. There was already in the first Trump administration $300 million that were secured, and I was able to secure an additional 350 because the solution is on the order of 650 million on the U.S. side, so that we could capture those flows in the Tijuana River that are contaminating our beaches. If they're not captured, then that's what causes the beach closures. And so that was a huge focus of getting that contracted and launched last year.
Anywhere from 10 million to 45 million of gallons of raw sewage spilling per day, I understand, at this from this international wastewater treatment plant, right? Even reports of hydrogen cyanide detected in the river valley.
Right. So, obviously the aerosolization of some of this untreated flow of sewage, which, could have been as high as 20 million gallons per day. And it peaked at 40 million gallons per day, as you would say, Sandra. And so that would actually highly impact the region in terms of smell. And so, no, it was definitely an area that I was flying back and forth between crisis on the South Texas regarding water and crisis in the South Bay area regarding pollution. And things are going really well. Things are moving forward, and construction, is well underway. So I'm really excited that the plans and everything that was left in place is continuing.
Beaches are still closed there, and it's probably more of a long-term fix. I mean, this isn't an immediate. It's going to take a little while before the water will be safe, before the air is completely clean, correct? I mean, what kind of time frame are they looking at there?
So when I was there, we had arranged a time frame to get an additional temporary expansion to our plant by April of next year in time for the next summer season. I understand that that the new commissioner has been working with the current contractor and has found other places where we can accelerate that. So I'm really excited that they're able to leverage that existing contractor and that the existing infrastructure can be expanded much quicker through a temporary measure so that all of the river water in the Tijuana River can be captured.
Now, that was also funded. Congress appropriated additional funds to the IBWC
Right,
this
right.
past fiscal year. So, and in addition, you got some funding for staff and some
Right.
much needed supplies so a lot transpired during your overseeing of this agency. And the next person who's taken it on, did you pass the baton on? Did you wish them well?
Oh yes, I told them this is very exciting work and there's a lot to be done and that the load is quite significant. So I wish him all the best and I'm really excited about what the future can be for the IBWC given the foundation that I left.
I do have to ask you, ma'am, do you miss it?
Absolutely, every day. I miss all of you South Texans. I loved my work. I loved the staff. Can you tell, Rudy, how excited I get? And if called to serve, I'd be more than happy to continue serving the border residents of the U.S.
Well, we would love to have you back again someday in the future. Thanks again so much for joining us today, ma'am. We appreciate you coming on. That was former U.S. IBWC Commissioner Maria Elena Gined. Now, if you missed part of this show or you just want to know more about what the former commissioner spoke about today, you can always get more at borderreport.com. And you can visit borderreport.com for all this, past shows, as well as the stories that Sandra and the rest of the team of very experienced border journalists are working on a consistent basis. That's going to do it for us today from Deep South Texas. For Sandra Sanchez, I'm Rudy Mireles. Thanks so much for watching.